For me, the 14th factory is the entire world right now. It's this new place where all the doors are open, everyone communicates all over the world instantly, all the time. It's this new zone and nobody really knows where it's going. We're at a unique place in history. We've never had this many people. We've never been so insustainable. We've never been at a place so close to collapse of the entire planet. And therefore, we are potentially at a point where everything is going to change, and that change could be environmental or ideological or who knows.
And I remember just meeting these people, and they'd come up and say to me with tears in their eyes, you know, and just trembling. Whatever we did touched people fucking very deeply and emotionally somewhere, and it humbles me.
You know, although it did have a very great effect, it failed on its huge volume in the sense that, you know, we were out to change the world, and I didn't.
I consider it a fight. I still consider it a fight. Life is a fight. It's just a fucking fight. But you can leave behind maybe something, even if it's just one person who thinks maybe a little better about things.
Simon Birch, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you?
I am so much better now that I am seeing you, man. I'm slightly embarrassed a little bit because I've really hunted you down and I don't want to say forced, but politely begged you to do this show because I
am flustered.
I say this with every degree of sincerity, and it's a reoccurring theme on this podcast is, you know, great art is a shot at immortality. Moreover, great art can change the world. And very rarely does it ever work. Most of the times it's a massive failure. And every attempt is somewhat of an attempt to do something. And what I've seen with your work is some of the finest and most moving pieces and relational aesthetics, which is something we can dig into for those not familiar with the art world. And the experience that I've had with your art, it is like you and I briefly met before, and for those listening who know of Sleep No More, it's the only thing that I could say akin to a kind of this voyeuristic, really intense experience. And I take it so seriously that you're here. I think you're changing the world, brother, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you.
Well, that's that one. Thanks for feeding into my insecurities that great art sometimes doesn't ever make it. It's quite true, and that's very flattering. But obviously, you know, I feel like I'm just a beginner and just getting started on my journey. And,
for those listening, that is way too humble. I mean, dude, I would put you past Banksy. I'd put you past Maurizio Catalan.
But it's relative, right? So you know, examples of success in art is relative, and you're right. There are artists that are brilliant who die without ever being discovered, without selling a painting, and you know, and I'm certainly not undiscovered, but I'm certainly not in that level of superstar art world being written about and interviewed. But this is probably the first podcast interview I've ever had.
Well, it's funny because we're gonna clip this in a year when everything changes, and it's gonna be like, oh, remember when he did that podcast?
That's it. It's weird because look, you're very kind to say those things, and you know, recently I've been sort of revealing a bit of the story behind my project, the 14th Factory, on my little Instagram. I only have a couple thousand followers. You know, I'm not like a girl in a bikini who has like 10 million followers.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do something for a living and I have a few thousand followers. So it's, you know, in my little bubble of my world, I'm just my mate's mate, you know, I hang out with my mates, my girlfriend, you know, I'm just a little pea.
of an artist that did this really big thing and really put everything into it. But it, you know, I haven't really blown up. I haven't become very successful or wealthy. You know, I live a very humble lifestyle. And these days I spend most of my time trying to raise support to do a bigger and better project. But it's very, you know, so in my little world, I'm little Simon Birch, and I'm, you know, desperately struggling to try and become successful as an artist and have some positive impact with my life. So, you know, I can see how you've obviously seen some of my work and my projects, and you've got, oh my God, it's amazing. But I don't feel that way. I mean, I'm humbled that people came to my exhibition, the 14 Factory in Los Angeles.
It's Chinatown, right? It was Chinatown that it was in?
It was it was in Lincoln Heights, which is to the east of, yeah. So it's east of downtown LA. So it's a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, which is a great pleasure for me because I really like kind of Mexico and that, you know.
My last name's Perez, bro. Welcome to the club.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I've been to Mexico in the past. I loved it. The people are so warm and friendly, and obviously the food's amazing. So we actually ended up in that neighborhood because, you know, it was cheapest. It really was very cheap. Well, we couldn't get a space. Yeah.
We're going to build our way up to the 14 Factory and to everything that you've done. But I think in order to give context and to understand everything, let's start.
The context is, So the context is.
Well, first, if it's okay with you, let's start at the very beginning. You grew up in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Were your parents artists?
Actually, they were at art school. And they got pregnant when they were my mum was 18, my dad was 19, and they dropped out of art school. I'm actually, my father's Armenian and my mum's Polish.
Wow.
And on my Armenian side, we actually have a very rich cultural history of design and art and architecture. But 100 years ago, there was an awful genocide in Armenia. And, a lot of Armenians had to leave, including my forefathers. So by the time my mum and dad grew up, we were just a very poor family trying to eke out a living. So my mum and dad dropped out of art school, both very talented artists, actually. But they never became artists really in any formal sense. So my mum paints still. She became an art teacher. My dad became a graphic designer. But when I was a kid, when I was born, my mum and dad worked really shitty, brutal day jobs just to pay rent.
Survival-wise, wow.
Yeah, so the mom was, full-time house mum, and my dad worked in a shitty factory, worked in a farm. He did all kinds of horrible jobs because he had no education, basically, and no skills at that time. But eventually, what happened is we got older. My mum and dad managed to go back to school. And my mom got a teaching degree and became an art teacher. My dad got a degree in graphic design and became a graphic designer. So by the time I left home, by the time they got divorced when I was about 16, they actually started their careers in their sort of mid-30s.
Wow. And
both went on to do quite well, actually. Yeah, I mean, they got divorced, so I haven't seen my dad for about 20 years. But I see my mum now, if ever I'm in England. But I left home when I was 16. I didn't see my parents for about 10 years. Yeah, wow. Weird.
Well, talk to me about your childhood. With having two parents that were, obviously artists at one point and had to take a break, did they instill art in you? Did you grow up painting and watching cinema? Like, what was your relationship to art?
I definitely grew up painting and drawing. I mean, we because of work, like many families who are sort of poor, I suppose. I mean, I don't consider we were poor because I felt when you're a kid, you don't know you're poor. You don't, when all the kids at school go on a ski trip and you don't go, I took pleasure in being that outsider. But the truth is, you just couldn't afford to go on holidays. So I didn't really mind. It's only as you get older when people buy a new pair of sneakers, when you're 14, and you've got the same pair of sneakers you've had for 10 years, and then people laugh at you and go, "You're the poor kid," So I didn't. So I wouldn't say I'm from a poor family. I think I'm from a great family. But we had a challenging financial upbringing. So that's why I left school, because we moved around so much because as my mum and dad tried to get work. And any time there's a better job, they would move to a different city. So I got dragged from city to city So, you know, you kind of learn independence. But I was obsessed with comic books, and I suppose that's to do with escapism.
Wow.
So I was obsessed with Batman, The Dark Knight. You know,
So
The
Frank
Watchmen.
Miller was a big inspiration.
Bill Sienkiewicz, yeah, Frank Miller, Alan Moore, Neil Adams. Yeah, there was, you know, an endless list, right? So I was obsessed with comic books, and I thought I wanted to be a comic book artist. So I used to draw panel after panel of superheroes. I had sketchbooks full of superheroes. Partly because I wanted to be a superhero, I wanted to save the world. But also, I wanted to be a comic book artist. But of course, I left school quite young, and I worked. So I worked from when I was about 14 or 15. But when I was 16, I worked full time. I worked in a bar. I was a dishwasher, like glass washer, dishwasher. And I pretended I was 18 because you couldn't work in a bar unless you were, you know, to be minimum 18. I was only 16. So I bullshitted that I was 18. And I worked in the coolest, trendiest bar in my town, which was called the Helsinki, which is in a town called Leicester, which is in the Midlands, which is where Birmingham and Coventry is. So it's the industrial sort of Middle England.
Peaky Blinders, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, but where I grew up, it was very high unemployment, a lot of violent street crime, a lot of drugs. I used to hang out in what you would call the projects, but we call the council estates. You know, with some very sketchy characters. But I've enjoyed it all. I thought it was all a great adventure. You know, hanging out with gangsters and drawing comic books and working in this cool bar and washing dishes and drinking beer underage. You know, it was fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
I enjoyed it all. I enjoyed it all. Even though it was, looking back, it was pretty rugged because, you know, it's like in certain parts of America, there is a risk of violence every day.
Yeah.
And I realized that where I live now in Hong Kong, the risk of violence every day is 0.
Wow.
But where I grew up, the risk was kind of 50-50 every day.
Yeah.
And I was a scrawny punk rocker kid. So I learned to box and to martial arts and because I got beaten up a lot when I was a kid. So I learned
learn to throw a punch. That's incredible. Well, so you get this survival job doing that and you're drawing and you love this. At what point did the catalyst happen where you started to realize, like, I want to pursue learning this further or do this professionally? Like, what was your path?
Well, it took 10 years because I did so many odd jobs as a van driver, like a delivery driver, worked in a factory, etc. I was a bouncer when I became kind of, you know, into fighting.
Yeah.
I became a bouncer for a while and saw some awful fights, I must say. Luckily came out relatively unscathed. And then I learned to DJ. And this is such a long time ago. It's 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I learned to DJ.
Wow.
Because where I was working, the bar I worked in, you know, one night a DJ didn't show up and I said, I'll give it a go. And I became obsessed with music. And I not only DJ'd, then I started running my own parties, like rave parties. So this is like late 80s.
And this is Milk Crate Vinyl days?
Yeah, fully,
Oh,
100%.
awesome.
So and back then, you know, music hadn't specialized in the way it has today. So you could play Big Daddy Kane, followed by the House Sound of Chicago, followed by Aretha Franklin, and you would just mix it all in, and somehow it worked. Soul to Soul was really big back then in England. So I DJ'd and I loved it. And then I started running my own events and they just went nuts. So I thought I was going to be a rave promoter for the rest of my life.
Wow.
But then it didn't work out. After a few years, I really fucked up my business. And oh God, you probably can't swear on this.
Yeah, you can. Fuck yeah, shit, cunt, piss, say whatever you want. Yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah. Easy, isn't it? Space them out. Yeah, so I really made a mess of the business. I did one big party that basically was cancelled, and I lost all the money. And suddenly I was in trouble and I was in debt, and I basically had to leave England under a black cloud when I was about 19. You know, with my head hung low, feeling like a loser, and I traveled around the world a bit on the, you know, I literally I left with about 50 quid in my pocket. You know, it was like $70 and I just backpacked and worked odd jobs in Thailand and Australia and wherever I ended up, and somehow ended up in Hong Kong, where I basically got a day job as a construction worker and a labourer. So I had no qualification for this, of course. But I got promoted very quickly because I was very good at working at height. I wasn't scared of height. So they put me on a bridge project. So I would work on a bridge. I'd walk up and down this 200-meter high bridge every day and abseil off it to kind of, fix holes and things like that. It was a bridge called the Qingma Bridge.
Were you roped in, or was it totally?
Yeah, roped in.
Oh,
roped in. Yeah, I did a bit of rock climbing when I was in Australia. I was pretty good at rock climbing. So, when they said, "Oh, there's something needs fixing at the top of the bridge," I'd be like, "No problem. Give me a rope. I'm off. Give me a harness. I'm off." And I would abseil up, a few hundred yards in the sky, and I did very well. So they kept promoting me, and then in Hong Kong, I met people in the sort of dance music world because, I was a DJ, and then I got DJ work. And then I started running my own parties, and they were hugely successful. So I was doing these parties for like 4,000 or 5,000 people every month or two.
Wow.
And killing it. Did so well. And then the government banned the construction work that I was involved in. They banned people working at height on buildings on a rope. They said it was too dangerous. Then they banned raves, all within a few months. Why? They banned raves, literally. Because, the rave parties got out of hand because there's a lot of drugs at these parties. Yeah. And the drugs here are run by the Chinese gangs called the Triads.
Yeah.
And the gangs would fight each other for the territory and just chop each other up. And the police basically said, well, we've had enough of this. We're going to ban rave parties. And that was it. Overnight, there was no more parties. So there is no large nighttime activity here at all. There's only small bars and clubs. And no
to this day.
Parties. To this day, yeah.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
That is incredible.
Yeah.
What?
If you want to do a concert, they'll let you do it in certain locations, government-sanctioned locations, but you have to be done by like 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, that sounds... So, I mean, it's probably better for an adult, but if you're at 19 wanting to have fun, fuck Hong Kong, man.
Yeah. Well, the point is, through all of that process, right, from being a kid, moving to different cities, DJing, being a bouncer, succeeding in England, then failing in England, succeeding in Hong Kong, and then being shut down in Hong Kong. Through all of that process, I always was drawing and painting.
That was my next question. So it never stopped.
Yeah, never stopped. Just never thought could ever be any good. And honestly, my work was awful back then, but I loved painting. I loved it. Really, it was therapeutic. I enjoyed it. So I by the time I got shut down in the rave business and the construction business, I saved up some money. So I thought, well, I'll just go back to England and I'll be able to fund myself for a couple of years to do like a Bachelor of Arts and study fine art, because maybe the world is telling me the reason I keep failing and none of these things working out is because really my true calling is being an artist. Yeah. So I tried to get into some schools in London, but because I didn't have any CV of arts education or whatever, any exams or anything, they wouldn't let me in. So I couldn't get into college. So I was like, fuck, what am I supposed to do? So it seemed like that they said, look, if you could put together a really good portfolio, we could review and consider.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I need to get my skates on and paint a lot of paintings. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll try and do an exhibition, and that'll spur me or give me a deadline to produce a lot of work. So I started work, and then I started taking my paintings around to galleries in Hong Kong. And there were very few back then. This is 20 years ago. There was only about a dozen galleries in Hong Kong. There's no art museum in Hong Kong to this day. So we're not like a normal cosmopolitan city where you have loads of galleries and art fairs and, performances and concerts. It's not like that here. It's really a financial capital. So there weren't many galleries then. There are a lot more now, though, because over the last sort of 6-7 years, they started a big art fair called Art Central, which then became Art Basel, which is the art fair from Switzerland and from Miami. So it's changed now, but back then there was nothing. So I went to a bunch of these galleries and I sort of knocked on the door and said, hi, I'm Simon Birch. Here's my painting. Can I do a show? And everyone said no. So I couldn't get a single opportunity to do an exhibition. So it really pissed me off, and I just thought, oh, fuck you, you know, elite motherfuckers, you know, just because I'm not a famous contemporary Chinese artist, which was kind of the thing then, because a lot of them would only represent Chinese artists.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, basically, I was unknown. So like, well, you don't really, nobody knows who the fuck you are. Why would we give you an exhibition? Because I can paint this. And they're like, well, we're not that impressed. So it pissed me off. So I rented out my own little space and put up my paintings by myself and just put up my own art show. Didn't sell anything, but man, did I love putting that show together, getting my friends to model for me and painting them and drawing them and then getting on the walls, and then my friends coming to my little opening, like 20 people turn up and like, oh my God, Simon, you're really good. Do this, you've got a future as an artist. And that was all I needed to keep going, really, was that little motivation from my friends who said, hey, you're really good. And then one of those friends said, hey, let me help you do the next show. I've got a bigger network than you have. Yeah. And that's what we did. Me and a couple of mates, this great woman called Michelle, my sort of friend's wife, she said, well, I know a bunch of bankers. Let's do another one. And we're doing more of a push. And then that's what we did. So we did a second show and a third show. And by the third one, we had like a really huge crowd turned up. Like 1,000 people showed up and sold everything.
No way.
And that was in the space. Yeah, so after a few years of being essentially unemployed, I suddenly became an artist selling work for more than I earned in a whole month. So one painting would be more than I earned in a month when I was a construction worker. So I used to earn maybe $1,500 or $2,000 a month, and then I sold a painting for $2,000. It's mind blowing. So that was that. And then the galleries took interest in me. And then I got introduced to a really good gallery called 10 Chancery Lane, which is still here in Hong Kong today. It's a brilliant gallery. And they said, you know, do a show with us. And they had their network and I had my network. And boom, prices went up. And that happened year after year after year, kept selling and selling and selling. And then because the work was kind of figurative, people, painting portraits and, you know, bodies, these rich people, bankers, which there are a number of in Hong Kong, started saying, hey, can you paint my wife, my kids? Can you paint me? So the next thing you know, I'm painting the chairman of HSBC, the chairman of UBS, you know, you name it, Rothschilds, all these big bankers and their families. And the commission just started lining up. And suddenly I had a waiting list. So I had to keep putting the prices up. Wow. The prices quickly went from a couple of thousand to a few thousand to sort of 4 or 5 to $10,000. And then I was just, oh my God, that was it. I found myself, you know, I was just, this is for me.
Must have been incredible to have gone from that to knocking on doors and everyone saying fuck off to now literally like you having to tell people, hey, you know, add a couple zeros and I'll do one for you.
Well, that's the thing. It was, I mean, looking back, it was an amazing, if that was my life, if that was the end of the story, it would have been a wonderful life. But unfortunately, things have gone all over the place since then. But it was that period of just paintings constantly and actually being able to rent a studio to work in. You know, after about 3 years, I could afford to rent a studio. So I had an actual dedicated space to paint in. And it was bliss, you know. I would paint 7 days a week, every hour that I could stay away. I was obsessed. So my painting technique-wise just accelerated rapidly. Yeah. I went from painting pretty average portraits to painting, you know, relatively decent ones, and really developing my own work into a much more sort of expressive and sort of abstract, you know. So I really took the opportunity and just sprinted. And I made sure I was nice to every customer and client. Every exhibition, I'd be so polite to everyone. I'd go to every other artist exhibition and introduce myself and try and make friends. You know, I really grasped that opportunity and sprinted. Yeah, so it was a journey. Yeah.
And as you were doing that, I mean, I imagine it's so cool to make that money for a while, but at a certain point, did it stop becoming fulfilling to just be doing?
No, I mean, the money I'm never really interested in the money. Yeah. I mean, other than, you know, coming from my background, obviously the first time I got a decent check, oh yeah, I treated myself. You know?
I'm sure, yeah.
A nice car, you know, and I upgraded my apartment and I rented a studio. So, you know, that was enough. I didn't need much more than that. You know, I was quite happy with that. I mean, I wasn't buying like handbags or whatever people do with their money.
Yeah.
I wasn't really
I don't know. I don't
interested.
have any. But
Yeah, you know
yeah.
what I'm saying. Just I'm not into like fashion and buying stuff anyway. I mean, probably the biggest luxury was going on a vacation now and again, which was a real first for me. To go and rent, a hotel, stay in a hotel on a beach.
Yeah.
That was, but we could just go to Bali because I'm a surfer, so go to Bali, which is kind of a cheap. You can go to Bali for a week for like $500.
Wow.
So I'd just go to Bali and surf. But it was, for me, that was such a revelation to be on holiday. I know it sounds so naive, but
No, not at all.
So excited to be there. The weird thing was, of course, I never told anyone about my past, sort of rough background. I always just used to, speak nicely and politely, and I just keep it to the art. I wouldn't get into who I was, where I was from, because I thought people would look down on me if they found out that I wasn't really an artist, that I didn't go to art school.
Yeah, what does that even fucking mean, to be deputized by some overpriced university? Like, fuck that, dude. Yeah.
What you say, there are some people can be very judgy, but of course I'm quite open.
Well, it's the art world. It's all pretentious, But
I think it was because I was so naive, and I was like coming from a non-art world background, and so many people buying my work and asking me out for dinner and things, going to fancy people's houses for dinner. And it was all, I didn't want to break, fuck it up,
Yeah.
So I just used to be super polite, super respectful, never used to drink because I didn't want to sort of say anything inappropriate or get out of control. So I was just always, just try to do my best and deliver and deliver and deliver. So somehow I just became this portrait painter dude. Hey, it's the portrait dude, Simon Birch. And I got invited to lots of nice dinners. And then, I'd get invited to sort of nice parties by brands and things. I just became on the scene here.
Yeah, like Louis Vuitton gave you an award, didn't they, in Asia? Yeah.
Because the truth is, one of the reasons I became very successful here, and I would say very successful because I'm, objectively, I'm probably one of the more successful artists to come out of Hong Kong.
You are the most successful that I
sold so much work.
Yeah.
And the price is pretty decent these days. So I've done a lot of exhibitions. I really never rested. But one of the reasons I was very successful here is no competition. So I'm quite sure if I had ended up back in England or went to New York or somewhere and studied, I wouldn't have gone anywhere because there are a million artists better than me. And that's still the case today, to be honest. But in Hong Kong at that time, I was this alone, tall, people say I look like David Bowie, but which is a very flattering. But so I'm this tall, white, look guy, who's polite and who looks cool with a funny haircut, and I painted well, and people liked me as a person, and I don't know, man. It was just right time, right place, and all that.
But insane talent, I'm gonna have clips of your work. I mean, dude. You're a video. I mean,
again, that's really polite. But if you know anything about the art world, it is very aggressive and it's very judgmental and it's very subjective. So what one realizes, and obviously I've taken great pains over the last 20 years to educate myself about art.
Yeah.
And I realize now, that where my art stands, and I've got a long way to go. Luckily, I'm still relatively young, so I've got a good 40 years left in me to become a good painter. So I'm still I still feel I'm just getting started. So I realize obviously people buy my work, but I've been to some very tacky houses that have my paintings in them. So I know a lot of people with very bad taste that have bought my paintings. And so, you have to be careful. And I also know that, I've never been picked up by any major gallery or dealer, and I haven't, appeared in Sotheby's or Christie's.
Yeah.
So I'm not, either I'm not at that level, and I'm not actually that good as you think I am. Or
I know you are. I mean, please.
Or somehow had bad luck and been ignored, and maybe it's a bit of both even. But so I don't really know if I'm a good artist or not. All I know is that my opinion of my work is I've got a long way to go. So, but I get it. People say to me all the time, "Oh my God, I love your work." It happens every day. But am I like Banksy in the auction houses and famous and rich? No. Is he a good artist?
Well,
You decide, right?
Well, he's playing a game, and I think he even kind of in a meta theatrical way poses that question. But you guys, are apples and oranges. Yours
Yes, it's very, very different. Very
yeah.
different. But the truth is that, there are artists that have been dismissed in their lifetimes, and he awfully humiliated. I think of Marcel Duchamp, for example, or even Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Right? Who now Marcel Duchamp is one of my heroes. I mean, and there are artists that I'm a fan of, like Santiago Sierra, who most people would look at their work and go, I don't get it. Like Fontana's one of my favorite, because Fontana's the artist that just slashes the canvas.
Yeah.
But he was around the 20th century. And if you ever see his work in an art fair, you could walk past it and think, oh, is that someone's damaged that painting? Because it's a blank canvas with a flash. The guy's a genius. It's brilliant art. It's brilliant art to go through the canvas. There's a hole in the canvas that you can go through. This stuff is amazing to me. So have I had a brilliant idea like that? Not necessarily as a painter. I think my paintings are all right, but I think I've got a long way to go. And when I look at, de Kooning and Joan Mitchell, I see their paintings in the flesh and I go, wow, that's a fucking painting. Holy shit, I've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So, but other people would look at de Kooning and go, oh, my kid could have done that.
Yeah.
But if you see them in the flesh, they're quite moving, And Joan Mitchell's another one of my favorites. It's this quite moving painting and a dedicated entire life, dyed painting, I mean, that's art. And then Picasso's the great example, right? You look at his later work, and most people uninitiated in the art world would say, well, my kid could paint that.
Yeah.
But you don't realize, but if you really look at Picasso's history, it's incredible what he did, how he turned art upside down. Same as Andy Warhol, etc., etc. Some of these artists recognized in their time, and others not. So am I a good artist? It's not for me to say. It's probably for history to say. It's from very smart people to say. But what I do know is I haven't really been written about, interviewed, featured in exhibition, invited to do gallery shows in New York. I remember.
Well, I'm going to change all of that for you. Literally, it starts here now. And
I'm over it. I'm over it. It doesn't bother me anymore. I don't give a shit.
I give a shit. I give a big shit. And this podcast is about literally building up the people that have inspired me and kept me from, I'm 5 years sober, from blowing my brains out. And just, even though I'm an actor, I'm not a painter. Your work is just like, man, I need to fuck shit up. And I'm so curious as the rise of the
Keep going. I'm just grabbing a glass of water from behind it.
I'm curious, as in obviously, like, around 2004, we kind of moved from that dial-up speed, starting to the more kind of Wi-Fi router that sped things up, and seemingly the world started to become more interconnected as MySpace happened and Friendster, and then eventually, Facebook and things like that. And with the internet and media and being in a bubble like Hong Kong, did suddenly, even though you said you weren't, and haven't been written about, did the internet and people uploading your work, did that start to cultivate an audience for you in other cities? Or
yeah, a little bit. I mean, I did start to see images of my work pop up on kind of, I don't know, Pinterest kind of things, so I did see images of my work popping up around the world, but I don't know. I guess I was doing so well in Hong Kong. I just kept painting. And I guess I kept meeting people in the art world here, because there was a clear interest from the international art world to set up in Hong Kong, because it's tax-free and because they can access the big Chinese collectors and Indonesian collector market. So you started to get these rumbles that, things are going to start happening here. Galleries started talking about moving here, the big ones like Gagosian and Davis Werner. So, and then, this guy started an art fair called Art Central. And then Art Basel bought it out. So really, in the last 6-7 years, it's accelerated dramatically. Now there's all the big galleries here. So I guess I thought, that my name was already kind of out there. I've been in a couple of little magazines and things, nothing too fancy, no art magazines really, but a couple of magazines from LA actually that were kind of cool back in the day. And then I'd seen my stuff pop up on a few websites and things. And I thought, something's happening here. I'm going to get picked up soon. I'm going to get an offer. Someone's going to give me an offer, say, hey, I run this gallery in New York. We'd love to show your work.
Yeah.
It never fucking happened. I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Still waiting. And the worst thing is because I just got a brilliant offer from a gallery in Los Angeles, but it was this, a year ago, and then COVID broke.
Oh,
and
God.
It's been on hold ever since.
Yeah. Fuck.
Anyway, so it's weird. I mean, look, the problem is with having this discussion, and you talk about, is your work any good? I think your work's great, and did your profile pop overseas? So I'm oblivious to it because I don't know why I haven't popped, why I haven't had more exposure. I don't know if my work's any good because I don't get any feedback. I'm not hanging out with curators and people in the art press or the art world. I was just always in my studio working and just.
You weren't doing the Mr. Brainwash, Shepard Fairey, click.
No.
Yeah, David Cho, like those kind of guys.
Yeah, I mean, I've met David Cho, and Shepard Fairey. I've met these people.
Yeah.
And said, "Oh, Simon, I'm from Hong Kong. I mean, I'm a big fan of yours. Oh, yeah, you're a friend of so and so. Yeah, oh my God, yeah, I love your work."
Yeah.
And I'd follow up and go, "Hey, it was so good to meet you. I'm going to be in LA for a week. Love to hang out." No one would ever reply me.
What the fuck?
Yeah. I think I've met everyone you've ever heard of in the art world, from Murakami to There's only a few that have ever replied me. One is a guy called Futura 2000, who's a New York graffiti artist.
Okay.
And the other guy from New York is a guy called Hank Willis Thomas, who's a brilliant contemporary artist. But I've met so many famous artists, galleries, dealers, collectors.
Yeah.
It's so rare that anyone ever replies your phone call. Because I think the truth is most people are trying to deal with their own shit, keep their own name up there, do their own show. They just don't have the bandwidth to help you. But I'll tell you what, I've made it my mission in life. Anyone that calls me, like you, I'm like, what do you need? No problem, I'll do it.
Oh, dude, it means so much.
I have the space here in Hong Kong, and I must have given 100 artists this space for free and just said, do whatever you want. I'll give you first show. You know what I mean? So I try to pay it back because I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people that ghosts people, doesn't reply their emails, even if I'd love to help, but I can't.
Yeah, or I'm busy even,
More in my life is people not replying me or ignoring me. It's been weird, but there are a couple of people that definitely try to help me and make instructions for me, but unfortunately it always just seems to just stumble and never go anywhere. Well, it's strange.
At what point did you, because obviously we'll get to the 14 Factory, but at what point did you decide to transcend just portraits and start dealing with sculptures and installations and visual, was that a gradual?
Very, very gradual. It's probably over about 15 years now, because as soon as I started selling paintings, I started meeting other artists in my community and making friends and meeting graphic designers and filmmakers and then saying, hey, we should do something together.
Yeah.
And I mean what I say. So I would go, okay, hey, look, I'm going to make this painting, and why don't you remix it and do some graphic design on the top of it? Yeah. So I started doing these little collaborations with people. And then I met a lot of sort of photographers and filmmakers here. And these are all, local Chinese artists. And I'd say, hey, I've got this idea. What if we filmed, like I'm painting these bodies moving. What if we filmed the body in your style and then we showed them next to each other? Unfortunately, like me, people in Hong Kong, artists are thin on the ground. So they'd be so excited to meet another artist and work together. There wasn't that cynicism like, oh, no, I don't work with anyone. I'm too cool. Everyone was just like, yeah, I'll do something with you. Why not? Let's do something. So I just started these collaborations and really enjoyed working with these experienced filmmakers and photographers, these graphic designers and fashion designers and performers. I just really enjoyed all these collabs. So I started doing these small kind of multiple artists group shows or installations. What you'd call now is immersive experiences.
Yeah.
But they were quite small back then. They would just be like, half a dozen artists, and we'd do a film bit and a music bit and a couple of paintings and a couple of sculptures, and everyone would be involved. And I would just fund these things and find a space and just put them on, because, the galleries weren't interested in that because they couldn't sell anything. because, you know, video art and stuff back then was really, you know, not something commercial.
Yeah.
The galleries just wanted me to keep painting the paintings and take the commission portraits, because that's where the money was. Because the gallery would take 50%, right? So, you know, they would encourage me to keep painting, but I found a balance. I would spend 6 months painting, do a show, make a bunch of money, then use that money to fund all these experimental projects. So 15 years ago, yeah, these were small things, you know, in a few thousand square feet, but I would be working with all these different artists, and they just grew, and they just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I did a couple that were really quite, so I thought, pretty substantial and pretty high quality. That was kind of where I was heading to do these immersive experiences. And this is before Instagram existed, you know, so there was no selfies back then. And then I suddenly got sick, got really, really sick. And yeah, so I was, I just, you know, I'd fallen in love with this beautiful girl. I bought this a lovely sports car. I won this art award, this Louis Vuitton art award for Asia. And I was, you know, I went to dinner at the Four Seasons. There were 400 people there. I'd stand on stage and say thank you. I was like, fucking hell, man, it's happening. And at the time, it's when this art fairs and stuff were happening. And I was like, shit, this is all about to happen. I'm gonna find a gallery in Paris and Berlin and New York, and I'm gonna be the artist. I'm gonna be a great artist. And I'm going to work every day. And suddenly I got sick, and I had to go to the hospital for a checkup. Cancer, you're going to be dead in 6 months.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ, Simon. I didn't know that, brother. So heavy, man. How did you buoy yourself during that? I mean, I don't know how anyone does. I mean, what the fuck, man?
This is like 20 years ago now. Obviously, I'm perfectly fine now. But it was... I had some kind of sinus problems and always getting kind of flu and cold and infections and stuff. And I had this particularly bad episode where I just terrible migraine. It was like really weird, and I couldn't get out of bed. And I called a friend who actually picked me up, carried me to hospital, and they did all these tests on me. And yeah, they found out that I had what's called NKT cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was late stage, so it was not good, and it's a very rare type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was the first Westerner they'd ever seen. It only affects little old Chinese people, little old Chinese ladies, you know. It only affects old Chinese people. It's very rare. They'd never seen a Westerner with this before. So the first thing they said is, how are you half Chinese? I said, no, I'm actually half Armenian and half Polish. They said, well, we've never really seen anyone with this condition before. So I said, well, what are my chances? And they said, maybe 10% survival rate, if you're lucky. I said, well, hang on. So what do we do? He said, well, we need to do chemotherapy and radiotherapy. I said, well, it's all very shocking. I said to the guy that, he said, well, what do I do? I need to go and see a specialist or something. And he's like, yeah, you need to go and see an oncologist, radiologist. I said, okay, so what, do we schedule it in? He's like, no, it's scheduled in. You're going now. I went, okay. So they take me up to another department, and I go and meet these, you know, cancer specialists. The oncologist says, I can't treat you. It's out of my realm of expertise. The radiologist says, oh, I've seen people like you before. You've basically got tumors all throughout your head and neck. I can treat you, but you probably still die, but you're definitely going to go blind, deaf through the process, because we'll fry you. We've got to fry your head.
Oh my God.
This all happened in like an hour, you know, from being diagnosed. Within an hour, I was sitting there being told, if you survive, you'll be blind and deaf. You won't be able to smell for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, like, fucking hell. I was like, you kidding? What? I felt okay, you know? It was, what? I'm like, I was in my 30s. I was, you know, young. I was really into fitness. I never drank, you know, never smoked. Fitness junkie, like, you know, snowboarding and surfing, rock climbing. And so I was insane. And I spent a day just like crying and in shock, calling people that love me and going, I don't know what the fuck to do. And of course, everyone went, well, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to we're going to, you know, call some doctors in different parts of the world and see if someone can help. Because at this time, I realized I was successful as an artist at this point.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who I was in town. And a lot of these people were very wealthy.
Yeah.
It was banker people. So a lot of these people were like, hey, we've got money, we know doctors, you know, we're in private health, you know, we're going to help you. So they started sending my results all around the world. And I mean, I woke up the next morning and just sort of shook my head and went, he did say I had a, you know, a 10% chance. Why don't I just decide that I'm going to be in that 10%?
Yeah.
And I put a smile on my face and I never cried again. I just got to work immediately. So the first thing I had to do was work out what other treatments available and who's going to give them to me. So I had to track down oncologists in Hong Kong that would even treat me. And it turned out there was only one that would treat me. And he gave me the hard word, but I went, I don't believe my chances are this low. I think I can do better. So I used my network to meet people in research science, in medicine. So I went to the leading sort of institutions in Hong Kong. This all happened within just days, didn't sleep for days. And I forced my way in through favor into pathologists and hematologists, into research laboratories, and just sort of went, just look at this. You've got to help me, you know. Tell me what's going on with my body. What can I do to improve my success rate? And I learned everything about the immune system and cancer within a week. I was a fucking expert. I call people all over the world. Luckily, my best friend is actually a surgeon in Australia. He was very helpful, though he was a junior doctor at the time. He had friends and who had favors to him, and he did a bunch of calls. And I spent a week just going crazy research, deep dive.
Yeah.
Not just learning about, you know, chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but what about alternative medicine? What about Reiki healing and kinesiology? What about Chinese medicine?
Yeah.
What about diet and exercise? All these things. What's the latest information? And, you know, I was under some pressure because the oncologist said, look, your situation's so severe. If you're not back here within 10 days, forget it. I'm not treating you. You'll be dead. So you've got 10 days to do your research and you need to start chemotherapy or I'm out. So I said, don't worry, 10 days is enough for me. I'll see you in 10 days. So I did all this research. I basically came up with a sort of project management cancer strategy, which was a sort of a mixture of all these different things I researched. So I realized to change my diet really heavily to be extremely pure, clean, organic, pretty much ketogenic. So that's like, you know, fish.
Less than 20 grams, yeah.
So pretty low carb, but some carbs because the energy consumption necessary to go through chemotherapy is incredibly high.
Yeah.
So but it was no gluten, no dairy, you know, no lactose, no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, you know, things you would expect, you know.
Yeah.
I had to remove all plastic materials from my house, any chemicals from my house, to make the apartment extremely clean with air purifiers and stuff like that. So no traditional cleaning materials anymore, no moisturizers and things like that. Everything had to be extremely clean. Same with soap, you know, and, you know, any washing materials, everything had to be clean. So that was part of it. And I realized, even though that was against the thinking at the time, that exercise would be a benefit because the way it affects different parts of your recovery systems. Chinese medicine, I've really bought into that, and acupuncture, because there are practitioners here from China that, you know, generations deep into that shit. So there's a lot of evidence here that stuff's really, really useful. And then I found certain supplements were really useful, especially high protein, very high quality protein supplements and high quality vitamin supplements. I committed to do some of these crazy things like Reiki and
I've done Reiki.
And kind of hypnosis therapy thing with regressive therapy and to unlock anything going on in you. Because honestly, none of those things do any harm, right? So you kind of let this loose.
Totally.
And then when you those treatments, it's like an hour with some kind of therapist, physical or mental.
Yeah.
Where basically someone's looking after you, which is a really lovely feeling, you know, to be cared for.
Yeah, the intimacy. Yeah, totally.
And then I committed to 6 months of chemotherapy and radiotherapy, the most aggressive I basically asked them to double the treatment they give anyone else, because normally they treat older people. I said, look, I'm young, I'm strong, so I'm an unknown quantity. Just give me double what you give everyone else.
Yeah.
So we upped the dosage of everything I had, because there was kind of a one-shot deal with this thing. It's like if you don't kill it now, it will come back and destroy you. So you have to get it out of your system 1,000%. So that's what I did. So I planned all that strategy. I wrote a little Bible on it, essentially, which I actually have shared ever since with people going through cancer who've been diagnosed. I share what I did. I don't say I'm a doctor, but I say, this is what I did, and this is my approach. And if you need help in Hong Kong, especially, I can give you resources, the cancer charities and people in medicine that I know that I'm, because I've been involved since then, 10 years ago, I've been involved with charity, the charitable side of cancer and care. So I'm a volunteer or ambassador or whatever you would call it. So, but anyway, but after all that happened and we got ready to start the chemo, the night before, I called all my closest friends, took everyone out for a drink, and I said, hey, I've got something to tell you. They thought I was going to say I was going to get married. I said, actually, one of the first things I did was broke up with my girlfriend because I
didn't want to put her through it.
Yeah, I thought it was very stupid of me. She'd never forgive me. Anyway, but that's done now. But I got all my friends together and I said, right, I'm not getting married. No, I've got cancer. I've been told I'm going to be dead in 6 months, and if I do, it's your fucking fault. So I need your help. You need a help when I get really sick. Someone's got to take me to hospital. You've got to feed me.
Yeah.
Whatever. So if you're either in it with me or you're out of this fucking room right now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, of course, they were slightly, emotionally blackmailed, but true to their word, everybody stayed and helped, and even to the point that artists documented it, photographed my process, and but it sounds like an amazing adventure, but the truth is, about 3 or 4 months in, especially when the radiotherapy started, it was brutal.
I can only imagine.
I mean, you just become a skeleton. You lose all your hair, but that's the last thing you're worried about.
Yeah.
Radiotherapy essentially, sort of burns you. I mean, you end up burnt, but inside your body.
Yeah, from the inside out, right? Yeah.
Everything inside your head and neck, where I was being fried every day, 5 days a week, it just rotted. It just disintegrated. So you're bleeding constantly out of all your orifices.
Yeah.
And and eventually you see you can't even eat. It's so painful. You can't swallow.
Yeah.
And you can't talk. You can't talk because you have to write on a notepad.
Yeah.
It's I can laugh about it now because I survived, and we have such a capacity to forget pain, trauma when you survive. But fuck me, it was brutal. And I really went in gung ho. I can survive this. This is nothing to me.
No, that positive manifestation is everything. I mean,
I don't know, man, because I read about manifestation, and actually the outcome of patients who believe they're going to survive is no different to the ones that think they're doomed. It's pretty equal. Maybe, I don't know if there's current research, but that was the research I was reading 10 years ago. The research that I read that was quite compelling was that if you hated your cancer and imagined killing it, that had a really positive outcome, strangely enough. So I would spend a lot of time, and I at the time I was some years into studying Bushido, like the way of the samurai. So I'm a third degree black belt in Kendo, which is you've probably seen people fighting with bamboo swords and stuff.
Yeah.
So I really imagined being a samurai when I was doing any of those kind of hippie therapies. I imagined being a samurai and cutting the cats to pieces.
Yeah.
So that was the one bit of research that convinced me that might be worth doing if I was going to think about anything rather than lying there feeling sorry for myself. But I never really felt sorry for myself. Honestly, I was.
Yeah. How do you, my show's called An Actor Despairs. How did you not cave to despair? Because how?
Because a few things. Up until then, I'd had a fucking great life. I'd come from nothing to become one of the most successful artists in Hong Kong history. I'd surfed, with being able to afford to go to Bali and the Maldives surfing, to go to New York, to go back to London to see my mother, who I hadn't seen forever. I went to Iceland. I went to all these places on my bucket list. Yeah. I'd been to so many of them. I told my best friends in the world that I loved them. I told my mother I loved her, so I never told her for like 30 years. You know, I reconnected with my brother. I have an older brother. You know, I told all my friends I loved them, and it was in a way that honesty that it brought, that singular narrative of survival and nothing else mattered. It made you really high and focused, and you suddenly saw the truth of the world about all the things we worried about, the complete bullshit, you know, money and popularity, and you know, the things that really mattered to me when I was sick was love, just friendship, things you can't buy. It's so cliche, but I would take pleasure in simply seeing a little puppy running in the street, you know, blissful things that don't cost anything. And it just it changed me dramatically. And I guess that's what it's like for people who have a child, you know, which I've unfortunately never had. I've always wanted a kid, but not yet. But
forgive me if this is an ignorant question, but during this time, were you doing any kind of creative output? Were you doing channel?
No, never stopped.
You never stopped. Wow.
I did the most successful exhibition of my life, bald like a skeleton. I thought it would be my last show. I remember going to the opening and actually fainting because I was so weak. And I wore a mask, so nobody knew I was there. Just my friends knew.
Very Vanilla Sky.
Going to prop me up, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a brilliant show, and it sold out. Partly because the rumor was out that I was dying.
Oh God.
And a lot of people bought and told me. We actually bought one, kind of thought it would probably go up in value after you die. And in a jokey way, but in a serious way too.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine commerce and art, bro. Yeah.
Really positively affects my sales. But thank God, because that money paid for my treatment, because the health insurance, which was called Bupa, reneged on paying for my health insurance. So I couldn't actually afford it. So fortunately, and generally, anytime I made a bunch of money, I'd treat myself to an adventure, and the rest of it would go on developing these experimental projects, which I would fund.
Yeah.
So I wasn't getting sponsored to do these exhibitions. I was the sponsor. So there wasn't a grant from the Arts Foundation or anything like that. No. I couldn't get any funding for anything I did. I would film these films and do these installations and rent the space myself.
Yeah.
So I did this exhibition, which was called This Brutal House, was the title of the exhibition. It sold out, and actually there was a big dinner there, which Louis Vuitton hosted, and it was for Art Basel. And I was there in my weakened state, and I met so many famous gallerists and collectors and whatever. And I thought, one of these guys is going to open me an exhibition. You know, he's dying. We want to get this signature on a paper before he goes. No one could give a fuck. No one gave me any interest at all. So that was a bit depressed. But I just didn't give a shit. I was happy that I knocked out a few last paintings. I'd had a good life. I'd got to experience being poor, being on the wrong side of the tracks, and then becoming successful and being able to buy a sports car and go on a vacation and date a beautiful girl. And I felt so blessed to have lived. Yeah. So I didn't care. I thought if I die, it was all good. I know how it works with cancer. If you get really sick and it looks bad, they pump you full of morphine, you go to sleep, done. You're out. And I've seen people die in hospital in that exact way because I really got involved with people suffering from cancer after that experience. And so I was happy, and I every day I was so loved. You know, people were like, can I get you anything? Can I help you? What do you need? You know, and I after that one exhibition, I spent the next year really as a recluse, only really seeing my closest friends, who were essentially my family, you know, because I was relatively estranged from my family at the time. You know, it's not like my dad came to see me or anything like that.
And from diagnosis or whatever the plural of that is to end of treatment, how long of a time period are we talking here?
Well, about a year,
A year,
so,
wow, God.
So I survived, and that was wonderful, but I almost wish I had died in a way, which you're not supposed to say things like that, are you? But the truth is, I was ready to go, and it was a surprise to me and everyone that I survived. But I fucking worked hard at it. I worked hard at it 100%. The diet and all this stuff, I really didn't stop. But it was when it got really rough, it was like, just let me go. Just let me go. I would wake up, throw up. The pain of throwing up would make me pass out. And then I'd wake up being carried to bed like a skeleton, you know, just I couldn't get out. I couldn't get up anymore. It was, someone had to help me to do everything. It was just, I couldn't speak. I couldn't eat. It was just brutal. I was just like, if I go to sleep tonight, I hope I don't wake up. I was done. So strangely, of course, then they go, this is a miracle. We can't find any cancer in your body.
Wow.
And they said, but you're going to have at least 6 months where we can't test you because you're so radiated.
Yeah.
We can't do another test. You're too fragile. So I basically, so what I do is sit at home, rest, eat well, but let me know if anything bad happens. Like, you get bad, you feel sick, whatever. I would feel sick every week. Every week I would suddenly go, I'd have a nosebleed, and then I'd feel like I had the worst flu of my life, and I'd call the doctor, and he'd be like, all right, come in, and then he would say, like, the truth is, Simon, and I was out of money by this point as well. It's cost me a couple $100,000 US.
I'm sure.
Everything out of the bank. So he would say, look, the truth is, Simon, if we find it's come back, you have to submit for these scans. Each scan was like, 10 grand or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be like, if we find it, I said, what do we do if you find I've got cancer again? They said, well, nothing. I mean, there's nothing we can do for you because we can't go through the treatment again. It would just kill you. You'll be dead. You'll be dead in 2 weeks. So I said, well, why the fuck am I coming back for all these tests? I said, I can't afford it anyway. They said, look, I'll call you if it's an emergency, but I'll see you in 6 months. And then I just kept getting these awful pains and problems. So there would be these emergencies, and he would just talk me through it, and he'd say, look, and then they'd recover a bit. And so there was this awful 6 month cycle of just being in agony and being sick. After 6 months, he submitted to the test. It was all clear. So I said, what happens next? He says, well, you've got 2 years until you're in remission, where you're essentially got the all clear. So you've got 2 years where you have to do these tests. I said, what happens at the end of 2 years? He said, well, if you've got it at the end of 2 years, there's nothing we can do for you anyway, but at least you'll know. So I said, okay. So I basically went on vacation for about 6 months.
Wow.
Sat on a beach.
Deserved. Yeah.
I tried to recover and did very little and tried to recover. And after a year, went for a test, all clear. And then after another half a year, all clear. And 2 years, all clear. And I said, when do I have to come back? He says, well, you should probably have another test within the next 5 years, which I did. And that's 7 years ago since the last time. Well, I have a blood test every now and again anyway, just for general health. But touch wood, I'm a survivor, dude.
Dude, I'm so proud of you and so grateful that you did, man.
Yeah. But the worst thing wasn't really the cancer. It was afterwards going. There was so much energy put into surviving. Then after, you just like you feel like shit all the time, and you keep getting these pains and sicknesses, and you're just like, what, fucking hell, it's not over yet. So you end up feeling really sorry for yourself and just like, why me, man? Because then you start to really, you're not in the fight. You're just looking and going, hang on, I'm not a complete asshole.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a dick. It's true. I can be a bit cheeky and, inconsiderate, selfish. But fucking hell, I'm not like a drug dealing, racist, homophobic thinker. Why me, man?
Yeah, what the fuck, dude?
It fucks with you. Then you're like, you feel hard done by. And then, of course, having survived, having done this brilliant show, that I still wasn't getting any opportunity as an artist. I thought, God, if anything's a great story, it's a survival story.
Yeah.
Surely this is going to open a door for me. So I get some payback. The payback's going to be, I'm going to become this great artist. Nothing happened. I was so pissed off. But while I was sick, I basically designed, like, if I could do one thing before I die, what would it be? And it was essentially the forerunners of the 14th Factory. It's a very, very large, the biggest exhibition I'd ever attempted. The space is about 30,000 square foot, and I designed this show. And I managed to have a couple of exhibitions post-cancer that did well. So I had some money, but I was still waiting for this kind of all clear. And I was so worried that it was going to come and get back and get me. I went, fuck this. I'm going to do this show. I'm going to use all the money I've got. I'm going to sell my fucking sports car, whatever else I've got lying around. Yeah. And I'm going to build the show of my dreams, which was called Hope and Glory. Yeah. But essentially was the incubator project for the 14th Factory.
And Hope and
So
Glory
I-
was in Hong Kong. I remember that,
was,
right? Yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
I built this 30,000 square foot show, which had life-size monsters kind of figures. It had a mirrored skateboard ramp. It had video installations of trapeze artists flying through the air, of tigers. It had these huge sculptural works that were in a huge ball that was the size of a house that was covered in thousands of trophies.
Yeah.
Each trophy having the inscription of someone who helped me survive. And on and on and on and on. These massive, almost like Las Vegas letters that were 30 meters long. These huge letters that spelt out the name of a long dead Armenian king. It was an enormous labor, this project, and it took a year to make, and we only had a month to install it, so it was real panic mode. I ran out of money, but luckily this lady who had just bought some of my paintings took a great interest in this project that I was building and said, look, I'll fill in the rest. And she she gave me actually about $200,000 when I ran out of money. Wow. And we built this enormous show for 1 month, non-profit, free entry. It was rammed. You could not move. People would line up all day to get into it. It was so popular. People like the 14th Factory, which you know about. People would come and sit there all day and just marvel at it. And it was it was a scruffy amateur version of the 14th Factory, but people fucking loved it. People had never been to an art show in their lives. It was so loved. People still talk about it today. 12 years now since that happened. People still talk about it. Say, oh my God, that changed my life. I became an artist because I went to that show. So that was that. And then I came out of that completely broke, and then started to think, well, maybe if I start doing more exhibitions, which I did, save up some money, I can do this more intellectual version of the show, which is called the 14th Factory. Yeah. So there was this incremental process of painting, experimenting in installation, and then immersive experience, leading to these larger projects, having to deal with cancer in the interim, trying to get my career more successful so I could generate more money to pay for these things, and not really succeeding. So when Art Basel came to Hong Kong, it really brought thousands of artists and opportunities for collectors to buy. So I suddenly had a lot of competition, and I just hadn't managed to get my stake in the ground in any other city to expose my work, or I just got drowned out by all this other stuff going on in Hong Kong. And to be frank, you know, all these galleries coming to Hong Kong were coming to sell, not to find artists, really. And if they were going to find artists, they wanted a Hong Kong artist, which meant a Chinese artist. But that's my perspective, and I don't know really. It may be, Ryan, honestly, you always have to sort of take a breath and think, well, maybe I'm just not that good an artist.
No, that's fucking bullshit, dude. You're brilliant.
You don't know, Ryan. You don't know.
I do know. I'm a pretentious asshole. I know, man. You're 153 people, man. You're one of the most brilliant, gifted humans.
Art is not like film, which is kind of indisputable, right? Everyone knows The Godfather's a good film.
Yes, true.
And now there are some films that are cult films that some people like and some people don't get it, right? Donnie Darko or something, which is quite a popular film, actually.
Barry Lyndon, you know, if we're going to go Kubrick, Yeah,
Wes Anderson when he started, right? But we all know now Wes Anderson, great director, great movie maker. Art is different. Art can be propped up, can be promoted, monetized to a degree. Everybody thinks it's shit.
Yeah.
So I won't say who I don't like because because it is so subjective that I don't even know if I know what a good artist is myself. But I definitely like stuff that's quite conceptually driven, and I suppose So I can say who I do like, but I can't say who I don't like because it's too easy to pick those brand name artists that are the biggest artists in the world that aren't necessarily the best artists, and that's the difference. You know, art tends to be really understood 100 years later. The film is understood pretty quickly. Some films get missed for a couple of years and suddenly they become hot.
Yeah,
totally. I remember Lucas THX 1138 before he made Star Wars. You know, that film was so ahead of its time and nobody really got it, and it didn't do well at the box office, but now people see it as a cult classic, right?
Yeah. So as an actor, I relate to you on such an iconic level of just nobody fucking giving you a chance and everyone shutting the door out and it doesn't matter. And all these, in my opinion, hacks do well that I don't think are good, that I won't name. At what point do you, Simon, realize, okay, these, Christie's, Sotheby's, they're not giving me the chance. I want to grow outside of Hong Kong. I've done great here and I've done what I can. I need to make the chance happen, whether it be London, LA, New York, Paris. Where did the idea start to come to take, Hope and Glory? Did I say that right? Hope and Glory.
Yeah, because that show was so successful. It was so loved. Obviously, nearly bankrupt me. But I just thought, God, I'm onto something here. I built the show that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't seeing shows like that. I wasn't seeing large, collaborative, multiple media environments that you could get lost in. And I saw stuff like that in China. I was going to Beijing a lot and working with artists in Beijing at that time. And I saw artist studios and shows that were kind of group shows that were installation based. And there'd been a project in Hong Kong sponsored by Chanel, which was a designed by an actual movable building designed by Zaha Hadid, which was this huge, looked like a UFO. And when you walked in, there was a number of artists who had created work along the theme of Chanel. Yeah. So everything looked a bit like a handbag. But there was something in that, a temporary experience that you wandered from room to room. And I was like, that's kind of what I wanted to do. But I thought, well, why can't it just be one piece of contemporary art? And why does it have to be curated? Why do I have to pick art by different artists? Why can't I direct the artists to create the work together from the ground up around a central theme? So, and that's what I did with Hope and Glory. And I'd done it with a few projects before that were much smaller. So, but Hope and Glory really was the incubator. I really saw the potential, especially I saw the audience reaction. I saw people from all walks of life love it. And I went, I'm onto something here. And again, this is before social media. People didn't take selfies back then.
No.
But I wanted to take it further. So I started to dig into the themes and concepts of Hope and Glory, which were very similar to themes you would know from film. If you've seen Harry Potter or Star Wars or The Wizard of Oz, they all have this central hero myth theme.
Yeah.
And these stages in that structure. And this is, Carl Jung talked about this, Nietzsche talked about this, and an author called Joseph Campbell wrote about it in the Hero with 1,000 Faces, back in the 40s, I think. And it was this idea that there's this shared mythology between all of us that we all buy into, and it's the story of Jesus Christ all the way up to Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I love that, and Hope and Glory bought into that idea of these different stages of our journey. And therefore, I could create a project that was universal in its narrative, and I could drive that narrative into the artworks, and then bring these artists and architects and filmmakers and composers in, and we would all work together to create these elements.
Yeah.
So after Hope and Glory, I really started to dig way deeper into philosophy and mythology, the things I was interested in personally, which were pop culture, science fiction, nature, and whatever else. And I really wrote the script of the 14th Factory, which was essentially the follow-up to Hope and Glory. So this is literally within a couple of years, I sketched out the entire project. What those elements were, I needed.
From room to room, you had the conceptual idea.
And that monomyth or hero myth structure is, you go down the rabbit hole into Wonderland, or heroes and villains. There are tasks to overcome. There's transformation, reward. There's a boon. There's a mentor, and all these things. So I sketched those out, and I slowly started to work out, well, the entry point, I need some kind of rabbit hole. I need a long, dark corridor. What's at the end of that? Maybe it's a reflection of yourself. What is a reflection of yourself? Maybe it's you moving because you don't. And who would shoot that? Well, who's in my network? Who have I worked with recently? Oh, this guy Doug Foster in London. Who would be in that film? Oh, what about Chang Sin and Li Wei, the artists I've been working with in Beijing? And I started just script it all out. Who do I want to work with? What bits could they do? Who does the shooting? Who's in the film? Who does the composition, soundtrack? Which is my dear friend Gary Gunn in New York, who's just an incredible composer. And I just started to script it out, and then basically place in who did I want to be the actors, the filmmakers, who's going to be the production manager. And I started to build this ideal dream project, the 14th Factory. And at the time, the Chanel pop-up thing, which was this UFO-looking building, I thought I will make my own structure and build it within there. So I'll build a temporary structure. And my plan at the time was that in Hong Kong, bamboo scaffolding. Because you see it all over the city. They don't use normal metal scaffolding, they use bamboo. And with that, it's really cheap, it's really pliable, it's recyclable. I could build essentially a circus tent out of bamboo and an organic kind of material. And inside that circus tent would be my circus, which would be this 14 factory thing, this procession of installations from room to room, large to small, dark to light, compression, expansion, and this, gardens and cinemas.
Crescendo, totally.
So where am I going to build it? So then I went to the Hong Kong government. There was a huge empty piece of land, which has been empty for about 10 years, but now they're building on it. And I said, can I just borrow this land? And I was working with a brilliant architect firm called Norman Foster and Partners, which is a British architect. And they sort of endorsed me, and we all went off to the races and presented this proposal. And they spent about a year considering it, whether we could use a piece of dirt in Hong Kong. And they said, no, you can't. So that was the end of the project. And then I went, well, fuck Hong Kong, then I'll go find somewhere else to do it.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm like a famous artist here. And I'd been to, property developers and stuff, said, have you got a building I could borrow? No, because I had no money.
Yeah.
So I couldn't afford much. And, my plan was always to run it as a non-profit because, I had this keen interest in what if I did the greatest art project and I don't make any money out of it. I do it for the people.
Purely selfless reasons.
So naive, so stupid. Because I thought I'd just seen that film, Exit Through the Gift Shop, the Banksy one.
I love that film.
Shows the hypocrisy of the art world by creating this artist called Mr. Brainwash. He's not even an artist.
No.
He's originally the guy making the documentary.
Yeah.
And they do a show in LA and 100,000 people show up, whatever. They sell $1 million worth of artwork. And it's all a joke. It's like a joke. We're going to make an artist, promote him, and you're all going to go. And then they buy the Brainwash is still a successful artist.
One of the most. I see him around all the time. Yeah.
I'm like, I said, what if I make a project, a documentary around it, where I build a project which pops up out of nowhere, where nobody makes any money, where it's just an amazing thing that inspires people and it's a wonderful gift to the world.
Yeah.
That was stupid, wasn't it?
Well, as artists, man, we have grand ambitions.
Should have gone full commercial, right? And made some fucking money. So I do this thing, and I just couldn't I couldn't find anyone that would let me do it. So I went to New York, I went to LA, nobody would give me any space. I had some money saved up. I borrowed a bit of money, and I thought, right, I've got enough money here that I could put some money down on a venue. And then I'm going to announce it to the world and fake it till you make it. People are going to go, oh my God, it's an amazing project. Let's do a Kickstarter campaign. Let's give them some money.
Yeah.
Or, we're a sponsor. We sponsor the arts. We're UBS or Deutsche Bank. We'll sponsor you. And I knew a lot of these people. So I thought, right, I've got a pool of money here. I've got this brilliant idea. Now I just need a space.
Yeah.
I know so many bankers, rich people. Someone is going to get behind this and bankroll it.
Totally.
So off I went. And
also, you just having survived this thing. So the whole world wants to see you come,
Yeah. Oh, this guy has already done this great project in Hong Kong, and he's survived cancer, and he's successful. What a story! Oh, now he's doing this really big project,
this magnum opus. Yeah.
We found a space. I found a space in New York, but they turned us down. Then we found a really big space, which is the post office at Penn Station.
Yeah.
Which was, and this is 7 years ago now. It's completely empty.
I remember it.
Millions of square feet of space, and we met the guy that's from the governor of the state of New York, from his office, who basically managed that building, and they were planning to redevelop it, and which they've partly done already, right?
It's still under.
And he said, just take a floor, do what you want, tell me about it afterwards. So I was like, oh my God, I've got a free space in New York, million square feet, so I'll take one
prime
floor,
location,
carved out 100,000 square feet. Rented out a PR company, rented out some staff, started employing people, got the architects over, did all the layouts, the design work. And basically, I then ran around Hong Kong and New York, meeting everyone in my network, going, I'm going to build the greatest art project in New York, you know, and it's not in a museum, it's independent, it's an immersive experience. And it was just no one would give me $1, but I was undeterred. I just kept going and going and going. But we was taking so long to get the project up and running. The guy was like, got nervous. The manager guy got nervous. He said, look, we're bringing in this company called Skylights who run Fashion Week with IMG. And he said, they already do the Fashion Week at our building. And they're going to manage you now. They're going to manage the deal and all that sort of stuff. And in our first meeting with them, they went, oh, we're so excited about this 14 Factory project. It's so cool. It's so edgy, you know, an immersive experience. It's so different, you know. And they went, but you do have to pay us $1 million as our fee, as our consultant fee, which I didn't have.
Yeah, who does?
And I went, well, we're fucked then. But the production company we'd hired at the time had started doing all the pre-production work. This guy, Ethan, who still works with us today, actually, he said, look, I know another building. And we looked at 20 buildings over this period.
Sure.
And he said, I know this really good building on Wall Street, 23 Wall Street, which is the original JP Morgan headquarters. It's like a 100-year-old bank where JP Morgan and those cronies, you know, really built the financial system of America. And Wall Street is interesting because it's called Wall Street. It used to be a wall when the Dutch settled there originally. So it's a very historic street and neighborhood. Wow. It's where George Washington, you know, signed the Declaration of Independence. So it's steeped in history. So I'm like, fuck me, this is way better. And that building we could get for very, very cheap, just tens of thousands of dollars, you know. So because it was in flux, because the guy that owned it had vanished and it had been empty for 15 years. So we managed to, they said, okay, we'll give you this window, you can do it dirt cheap. So that's it. We announced the 14 Factories coming to Wall Street. Yeah. And I launched a Kickstarter campaign and I went to all these sponsors and I was meeting so many interesting people at the time in charity, in brands. So I met people from Samsung, LG, IBM. I mean, you name the brand, you know, whiskey companies and beer companies and sports car, BMW, all these people. I was meeting all these people. I'm like, oh, it's all still just going to happen. Yeah. And then I met, you know, Tommy Hilfiger, who, you know, we threw a big dinner party at the venue. Wow. And Tommy Hilfiger did a speech, you know, and we treated 100 people to dinner. The people that catered the dinner for me as a favor was Noma from Copenhagen, which was at the time the #1 restaurant in the world. Wow. They did me a huge favor and did dinner. So it's in New York Times, like artists doing a brilliant show, doing the biggest show on Wall Street. Noma's doing a dinner party. Tommy Hilfiger did the speech. I was like, fuck me, the money's coming now.
Yeah, let's let it rain.
I met the guy that did, what's his name, Rockwell, who did that new development up on the upper west side, that big movable building.
Yes.
Heatherwick thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
Not Norman Rockwell. I know.
Anyway. So I was meeting people like that. I met the guy that runs the Met Gala. Yeah. You know, I'm meeting pop stars and celebrities. It was just like, I'm in New York society. Yeah. And I've got the space. I was taking people physically to see the space, going, this is where the show is. It's real. You know, here's the lease, you know, it's real. Invest in me. And I didn't get $1 in about 2 years of saying I'm doing this show, someone help. And at the time I was, you know, still running as a non-profit. So I was applying for New York Arts Foundations. Yeah. They were pretty well saying, could you put in 50 grand, you know? No. Maybe the second project, but not this one. I couldn't get any money. So, and I was running out of money the whole time, you know, doing all the
burning through the beginning. Yeah.
Oh man. So it was all on track. And I was meeting all these charities. I was saying to these charities like Robin Hood, you know, I was saying, you know, when we do the show, we'll do a Robin Hood week, you know, where you take the proceeds from the show so you can benefit too. Yeah. You know, I was going to Brownsville and meeting all these really educators and people in less privileged communities, you know, I loved it. Going up to the Bronx, going to all these places, meeting everyone I could in New York, saying, I'm Simon Birch, I'm doing this show. You don't know me, I'm a good guy, I'm doing this thing. This is what I've done in the past, this is what I'm going to do now. This is the building, this is who's on board. And nobody would put any money into it at all, zero. So it just got closer and closer to, shit, man, there's deadlines here. We have to come up with money. And I was literally, I'd sell a painting, the money would go straight out the door. And it just couldn't work. I was trying to borrow more money. I managed to put together a little group of some of my collectors and borrow some hundreds of thousands of dollars, which kept us alive. And then at the very last minute, it was like everyone was saying, you're going to have to pull the plug. This is never going to happen. You can't get any more money. I went, I will find the money. And I flew to Hong Kong and did a speech at this kind of private members club for a bunch of wealthy people. A friend had done me a favor, said, I'll put you in front of a bunch of rich people. At that point, one rich guy stood up and went, I'll give you a check right now. Get on it, do your project. And gave me essentially the balance of what I needed to fund the project. I flew to New York the next day with the check in hand and walked into the production company and went, nailed it, got the check, let's go. And they went, oh, we didn't expect you to come back. We actually cancelled all the contractors.
No.
And I went, well, I've got the check, just call them up. So they called up all the contractors and said, oh, this guy's turned up with some money. Are you in? And they went, well, we're all taking other jobs now. We've been waiting for this guy for too long. Because it wasn't like overnight. It was like they were waiting for me.
It was slow burn.
We already gave up. And so the production company came back and basically said, well, give us a few $100,000 US in our pocket. We'll make it happen. I went, I don't have any. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
And they went, see ya. Wouldn't want to be. That's New York for you, mate.
Oh God. Don't I know
it? You're a fucking loser. See ya. And it was overnight. I had money in the bank to do the project. Most of the show was already built. And lost the venue. So I talked to the landlord or the reps, and I said, look, can we just push back 6 months?
Yeah.
And they went, well, we've had it with you too. We thought the show was going to be open next week. What the fuck? No, we've had it with you too. See ya. Everyone just deserted me. And I had money at that point in the show. But the truth was, though, I was naive about New York. I didn't realize how dog eat dog it is. And it's not, I mean, I remember meeting this philanthropist, art patron, took me out to a fancy dinner and a lovely time. And she said, no problem. I'm gonna put in up, a few $100,000, no problem. The check never came. I called, what's going on? She's like, then she wouldn't return my calls, and she just fat ghosted me. And then I bumped into one of her friends at like a party, fashionable party. I said, fuck, what? I'm trying to get hold of your friend. She promised us a few $100,000. It's never come. And she's like, well, to be honest, she decided to put $1 million US to buy herself a board member seat at the MoMA.
Oh my
and she
God.
told the MoMA that this is hearsay, but the rumor was that the MoMA had said, that project could be shit. Just
what?
keep the project. I don't know if that's true. That's just gossip from a friend, right? Like, it was like, you're telling me that the MoMA told her, don't give Simon Birch money because the project might be shit. She said, yeah. And I said, well, I don't believe it because that could just be gossip.
Totally.
But definitely, I found out the woman gave all the money she was going to give us, gave it to the MoMA. But the MoMA's been there forever, so it's a much less risk.
Yeah, but I mean, what a fucking. Ugh.
But whatever. So it was just an awful time because I basically.
So how did you stay undeterred, man? Like, how do you keep that stamina going?
I was so fucked that I basically spent a couple of weeks desperately trying to find another space in New York, a cheap space that would let me build some semblance of the show. And we even tried, we looked at, could we just do one piece of the show at Wall Street immediately, just so there's something up. But honestly, people were shouting at me, everyone was deserting me, jumping shit. Everyone was just like, but this is like Fire Festival. This guy's fucked,
Jesus.
And that was happening around the same time that all those people, but that guy raised $25 million US.
Oh God, I
blew
know.
all the money.
Yeah,
they didn't raise fucking anything. They couldn't raise a fucking dollar. And my project was the real deal. I had the real space. Art was built. I was already showing people.
And you weren't a con artist. You had this huge art career, Real,
but people treated me like I was like, and that really felt like, and it was my feeling. It doesn't not because because you have to realize there was a lot of people that did take my phone call and did say, we'll buy you dinner, tell us, or we'll introduce you. But you know, the worst was I was at the JP Morgan Bank building, right? It's a pretty beautiful building, empty, still empty. It's still empty. I remember I had a friend who'd bought my work, and he was at Morgan Stanley, which is part of JP Morgan, and he introduced me to the CEO of JP Morgan in New York.
No
and I
way.
sat and went to this meeting. Went, dude, or maybe it was the CMO or something like that, but he was a top dude. And I went, dude, I'm doing this amazing art project. You've been recommended by my friend in Hong Kong. He's the boss in Hong Kong. And he's told you to have a meeting with me. And he's vouched me. He said, I'm an incredible guy. He buys my work. The project is brilliant. This is what it looks like. This is the building. It's the JP Morgan original. It's your original bank, mate.
Yeah.
Sponsor me. We'd love to, but it's not a good time for us. It's like, are you kidding me?
You're the biggest
Come
financial
on.
institution in the fucking world. You rip people off. Yeah.
No one has ever sponsored us. It's been a really depressing thing. And even I've worked with Louis Vuitton in the past, and Diesel and Shanghai Tang and a few different brands I've done bits and bobs with. But no one was sponsoring me. It was so depressing. So I was really emotionally I was devastated, absolutely devastated. But I kept looking for venues around New York. And I had these friends in LA, I had friends in LA who, Birch, man, don't worry, we'll take care of you. Why don't you just come to LA and hang out? So I jumped on a plane, went to LA just to clear my head and go surf, with my buddies. One of my buddies, Justin Diener, who runs a company called Drive Studios, said, hey, why don't you do it in LA? Well, I'm in the film business, We know so many locations that are big empty warehouses. Give us a couple of weeks. So I spent 2 weeks driving me around LA going, what do you think about this place? What do you think about this place?
Yeah.
But I only had a little bit of money left. I had enough money to put it on if I didn't really have to pay rent and not have zero staff. I could pretty much afford to install the work and open the door and run it myself. And I thought, well, so we basically found the cheapest space we could. And one of the biggest spaces, which was this old factory on the outskirts of LA in Lincoln Heights, this Chinese factory warehouse building. It's like 100-year-old building. And it was made of like 10 different buildings. They'd obviously expanded over 100 years. Yeah. But the oldest bit of it was about 100 years old. And there was a landlord who was basically one of those big multinational greedy landlords that owns 1,000 properties across America.
Of course.
And they just bought the building. They spent about $10 million they paid for it. I heard they sold it for 3 times that, but that may or may not be true.
No, that is true. I heard the same thing.
Oh, well, anyway, it was because we put the fucking building on the map, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's because of what you guys did. Yeah.
That's why, because apparently the offers to sell it came while the show was on. Wow. So while the exhibition was on, they were getting offers, people trying to buy the building because nobody had ever seen the building before.
No,
so
and you guys decorated the hell out of it,
Oh, I personally renovated it myself.
Yeah.
I still smell of paint. Anyway, so I found this building. I knew that we were going to run out of money before we opened, but I thought I can just bullshit my way through. I'll convince the landlord. They pay. We only had to pay maybe 50 grand a month rent. Sounds like a lot, but it was it's over maybe 150,000.
Yeah, it's insane, huge.
But I was so exhausted from New York, I didn't really think it through. I just thought, I'm building this fucking show if it kills me.
Yeah.
It was the last show I ever do it. I'm just fucking doing this. I don't care if I lose all the money. I can't pay anyone back. I'm fucking doing this. And my friend Justin, the guy that found the space, he said, I'll be your project manager. I said, I've never built an art show before, but I've built a movie, so I know how to produce a show.
Yeah.
So he, for very little money, in fact, I think I still owe him money, but I gave him a couple of paintings to make it up. But basically, for very little money, he put a little team together, and we found the contractors, the painting guys, the woodworker guys, the steel guys, and we started to build the 14 factory. And I joined the team, a construction team, and painted and cleaned. And I think I spent the first couple of months in that space alone, just cleaning it to a degree where it would cut down on the cost to paint or put up false walls. So I knew there were some walls that I wanted to come out,
Yeah.
So we got permission to cut them out. I just bought a sledgehammer and spent days just knocking down walls with a couple of mates.
Wow.
And to try and cut down the sort of production cost. Because when the construction guys came in, they said, well, look, if that wall's not there, it'll cost us $2,000 to knock that wall down. So why don't you just get a hammer and do it yourself? You know, if you clean this room, it'll be half the price to paint it, etc., etc. So unfortunately, we found very good contractors. We found a lot of volunteers, and I moved to LA. I slept in the building.
No
and
way.
It's like a really rat-infested, pigeon-infested shithole. And I bought a bed from IKEA, a mattress only, and I had a suitcase and a mattress. There's no hot water. I found a shower in the basement that was disgusting, but at least I could clean myself. No hot water. And I lived there for a year.
Oh my God.
Not for the whole year. I lived there until we opened. So then I did my best to get the space prepped. And then we had employed these contractors who were very reasonable and generous. And I basically would also walk down to Home Depot every day. And there would be Mexican guys that were illegal workers that were hanging out. And I'd say, get in the truck. And I'd get 6 guys, and we'd go and fill the garden with mud. We'd paint walls. We'd, it was different guys every few days. But I made a lot of friends in the local community.
I'm sure they loved you.
I got fantastic, cheap Mexican food regularly.
Yeah.
And we just got dirty and built this fucking thing. And it was...
How long was between the time you got the building to completion of construction?
6 months. And if you'd had a proper contractor team, you could have done it in a month. But it took us 6 months because we could only afford one team, and so, one guy's to do it all. And we just got in there every day and got drunk and worked till through the night and had fun and built the 14th factory, painted every wall and surface, built a garden, somehow trucked in airplane tails from the Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
Did a deal. We're not those ones. They weren't supposed to sell them. But we
built the Kubrick room.
Yeah, built the 2001 Space Odyssey room. That was one of the most expensive bits of the show.
Oh, for sure.
We may never be able to show again, unfortunately, because we almost got sued by Warner Brothers.
Oh, God.
I mean, there's so many stories with every element of the show. That's a whole nother podcast because it's.
Well, we have to do more of this. Like, I think we're only we're 2.5 hours in, and we're only just getting to the beginning of the 14th factory.
We're only an hour and a half. What's your cutoff then? So I should pace myself.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like I could go even longer, but I don't want to, because I know you're 12 hours ahead. Do you want to pick this? Do you want to pick this back up like tomorrow?
Yeah, we could do a part 2. I can't tomorrow because I'm with the architects tomorrow, but I can do one again in a few days, maybe Monday, Tuesday. Yeah.
So why don't we do this? So this, ladies and gentlemen.
At this point where essentially I've failed most of my life at everything I've tried to do, and I've had these little periods of success, and surviving cancer was clearly a success, but why the fuck did I get cancer? It sucks. And building Hope and Glory, which was this ignition point for what is now a trendy thing. Immersive experience is a trendy thing. But back then, I hadn't seen anything like that personally. I'd only seen one project like that, which is Matthew Barney's Cremaster project at the Guggenheim in New York, which was really an immersive experience, which involved filming it and performing in the space and stuff like that. That was very inspirational to me. So there you go. After Hope and Glory, then I tried to build it in Hong Kong, failed. I'd actually tried to do it in LA previously, but it was with the help of Ridley Scott's company. Couldn't get it through. And then it's amazing. My access is really quite high level. I've known people in very high places.
Oh, I know you have.
Going to New York, I really thought, well, this is it. This is where I make it. New York, make it New York, make it. I'm going to build this project. Completely devastated, crushed, and all those contexts didn't come through for me, though many people did. Though it tended to be people that didn't have money that came through for me, not people that did have money. But that's another conversation about why people with money don't aren't creative and don't
Yeah.
do anything with that money for the greater good. But that's another conversation. And clearly, I know wealthy people are extremely generous.
Totally.
So some of those people that loan me money, you know, in New York eventually, they were all from Hong Kong, but still, it was, you know, a huge leap of faith for people that actually loaned me money to build that project. So the point is, you know, New York collapses, and then I get to New York, and I'm on my last legs, and somehow I drag myself up from the dirt, manage to find this scruffy group of pirates, and built what I think is one of the greatest art projects in the world.
It is.
So we're at that point now where we're in the trenches, building the exhibition, and the building of it. There's so many clever stories, fascinating stories of the different elements, and that's what we should do next. Is break down some of those amazing, highlight a few of the amazing stories, and then what happened when we opened, and what happened after that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been incredible. Thank you for listening. This is only part one. We're going to pick back up with the construction and completion and launch of 14th Factory in a few days. Simon Birch, I love you, brother. Thank you so much. This is amazing, man. You're changing the world, and it means so much for you.
Not yet,
sharing.
but maybe soon. Not yet.
No, dude, I love you, brother. And let's do this again in a couple days.
All right, set it up. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, love you, brother.
Love you.
Right,
Bye.
peace.